Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX BlueBird Block 1 through 5. Tonight, SpaceX will be set to launch the first 5 commercial satellites for the AST SpaceMobile cell phone compatible broadband constellation. We are counting down to a targeted liftoff time of 4:52 a.m. Eastern Time, but as usual, this time of year we are monitoring weather conditions. We are currently only 30% go, but we are counting down. L minus 1 hour, 9 minutes, and counting till launch. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. AST has gone live now. SpaceX will be going live about 15 minutes ahead of launch, and we will work on patching those in. Today's Falcon 9 is booster 1078 going for its 13th flight, set to land back at landing zone 1 here in Cape Canaveral. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And let's listen in to AST SpaceMobile as we count down to launch.
Live view of the BlueBird 1 to 5 mission at the launch pad here in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Welcome to our webcast. I am your host, Dave Mosher, and I am a member of AST SpaceMobile. We are coming to you from the Apollo Saturn V Center at Kennedy Space Center. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but a big crowd has assembled here to witness history in the making. In fact, let's take a quick look at the floor if we can. We have hundreds of guests here that are assembled. And a little later, we should hear from our founder, chairman, and CEO, Abel Avellan, in a quick speech to that crowd. Now, we are located just a few miles away from Space Launch Complex 40, or LC-40 for short. A Falcon 9 rocket is standing 23 stories tall out there with AST SpaceMobile's first 5 commercial satellites, called BlueBirds, nestled inside the top of its nose cone. AST SpaceMobile's BlueBird 1 to 5 mission is not only a huge milestone for our company, but also the future of how the world connects. Why? Each of our BlueBird satellites is built to eliminate dead zones. They will provide cellular broadband coverage from space directly to everyday phones, just like the one you already have in your pocket. Now, our unprecedented mission is currently scheduled to lift off at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. However, like all rocket launches, the situation is fluid. We'll keep you posted on weather and other issues that may affect launch timing while we count down to that launch. In the meantime, we have a great show for you today. We have more live views of the launch vehicle and words from some very special guests that we have here, and also some pre-recorded footage. Now, AST SpaceMobile has partnered up with some incredible players across the mobile industry, including American Tower, AT&T, Rakuten, Verizon, and Vodafone, some of which are here today to share their amazing stories. Now, if you are new to AST SpaceMobile, welcome. Thank you for joining us. In fact, I have a little something special to catch you up on our history and what we're all about, featuring our founder, chairman, and CEO, Abel Avellan. Let's play that clip. Welcome back to the studio. If you are just joining us, I'm Dave Mosher with AST SpaceMobile, and we are counting down to the launch of our first 5 commercial satellites called BlueBirds. These birds represent the dawn of the world's first space-based cellular broadband network. They are designed to work like cell towers, so your phone doesn't know the difference. We just heard from Abel Avian, our CEO, founder, and chairman of AST SpaceMobile. But there are some folks who have been with us since the early days and have a unique lens on our company, its origins, and our pioneering satellite direct-to-cell technology that is capable of 4G and 5G connectivity and beyond. Before AST SpaceMobile went public, many of our would-be strategic partners looked at what Abel and the team were doing and our unique plan to use satellites to connect to everyday cell phones. One of those people was Ed Knapp of American Tower Corporation, who is now a board member for AST SpaceMobile. Let's listen to what Ed had to say as we near today's highly anticipated launch. Ed Knapp, CTO of American Tower and a board member of AST SpaceMobile, sharing his his stories of how he came into this company and his vision of it. Now, it is incredible to have Ed on our team, plus one of the largest cell tower companies on Earth, mind you, supporting our mission to connect the unconnected. As we count down to launch, the Space Force is closely monitoring our launch weather today. The latest forecast gives us about a 30% chance of squeaking toward liftoff today. The good news is that is the overall window, so we may have a little bit better window at our time, which is currently going to be 4:52 a.m. That could move. We'll watch the weather. So that launch window is open through 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, approximately. So we have a good amount of time to wait for a cloud moving over the launch pad to get out of the way. In fact, we are about 20 minutes away from finding out just how serious a launch attempt will be, which again is at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time as of right now. We are listening for a call called a go for a prop load. That means they're going to start fueling the rocket with propellant, because if you don't fuel a rocket, you can't launch it. So it's a really important call for us to listen to today. Now, while we wait for that, and as more of you join us this morning, rolling out of bed, or maybe you're in Europe and you're already awake and got your coffee, I'd like to introduce you to a very special guest who knows a lot more about I do than both cell towers and satellites. And this person also has a very unique view of AST SpaceMobile's journey in earlier years. With me here in Cape Canaveral, Florida, from AT&T's headquarters in Dallas, Texas, is J.R. Wilson, Vice President for Tower Strategy and Roaming. J.R., welcome to the webcast.
Thank you, Dave. Great to see you. Good morning.
Thanks. Now, I hear you're a big fan of AST SpaceMobile. And also, AT&T has some deep-rooted interest in this company. Can you kind of paint a picture for us here about that?
Yeah, first, you got to go back. So obviously, we're a 100-year-plus company. We've been around for a very long time, and AT&T has a very rich history when it comes to satellites, and it actually goes back to 1960. AT&T, working with Bell Labs, we launched our first satellite. And in 1962, we launched the first communication satellite. It was called Telstar. And that was quite successful. And you think about that time frame, like 1960, that was 3 years after Sputnik. Yeah, 9 years before the lunar landing. So very, very rich history. And then you look at the journey kind of leading up to now. We made many, many investments in satellites over the years, and those investments came in different shapes and forms, including broadcast, which we still have investments in today. We've used satellites for cell site backhaul in very remote regions. We use satellite connectivity extensively for our national disaster recovery, which is really the envy of the industry, leading all the way up to now in our collaboration with AST.
That's incredible history. I was just thinking about that as I was looking over today's notes. Like, that was 3 years after Sputnik when you guys were working with satellites. It's
amazing.
It's amazing.
It's really amazing.
So, and I didn't personally think of AT&T's history as going back that far. So
yeah, and I don't think most people think of us as a company that's like a satellite company.
Well,
because
clearly,
we're a connectivity company.
Yeah. Well, clearly you have that interest in satellite companies, and especially ours. You've kept a pretty close tab on the progress that we've made over the years here. Can you share some of those things that stick out to you? Those major milestones that AST SpaceMobile, in partnership with AT&T, has sort of accomplished.
Sure. Well, first is, it kind of goes back to the shirt, right? We believe that connecting changes everything. So that's the mission that we've been on with AST SpaceMobile, and we've reached some very significant milestones. So going back to the launch of Blue Walker in 2022, as soon as we could, we began testing. So we first, we started with our first voice call, then we moved on to our first video call, then our first 5G call, and of course we've been doing a lot of other testing and configuration along the way, working closely with the Bell and the rest of the AS team. So this is really all about how do we start to pre-optimize a network, getting ready for commercial launch and a true go-to-market.
Mm-hmm. So, you've given us a really good detailed background on the company as its relationship to satellites.
Yeah.
What about do you have any personal connection to these things we're trying to launch into space today. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, a little bit. I actually started my career with a company called Teledesic, which was funded by Bill Gates and Craig McCaw, and the mission of Teledesic was effectively to become a satellite broadband provider, similar to what Starlink does today and companies like OneWeb. And then I moved on to AT&T, and my journey at AT&T has really been about, how do we connect as many places globally and in the U.S. as we possibly can. And, we've accomplished quite a bit over those years. You look at our roaming business. We cover 225 countries.
That's amazing.
We have more carriers in more countries than I believe that we still hold the title of anyone globally. So that's one. And then secondarily, I was involved in starting a business that provided wireless communications on cruise ships, and all of the backhaul was delivered over satellite. So I was a big part of that business for a number of years, and in fact, we still have a relationship with that business, and our customers can go on 175 plus cruise ships globally. So this is just like a natural extension of everything that we've been doing and everything I've personally been doing in my career for the last 2 decades plus.
You kind of anticipated my next question, which was, what is a terrestrial, mobile network operator doing, like hanging out with and buddying up with a company like AST SpaceMobile? You sort of answered that, but I don't know if you wanted to add any more flourish.
Well, look, it's a very symbiotic relationship, right? Because in order for direct-to-mobile to work, you have to use terrestrial spectrum. So it was a natural partnership. And actually, going back to that experience that I had with the cruise lines, that was when I first met Abel. And that was actually when he first started sharing his ideas, his vision of what became AST.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just really, really cool. So, and going back to that testing that we did, the voice, the video call, the 5G, I mean, that was all delivered over AT&T spectrum. So it just makes sense that we collaborate very tightly.
Yeah, and here we are on the cusp of launching these 5 birds. I mean, what does this mean? What does this mean to you? What does it mean to the company?
Yeah,
why is it significant?
Great question. It's huge, right? Because direct to mobile, I mean, what the beauty of it is the seamlessness of it. Because you don't have to, you can use your existing handset. It'll work with the majority of handsets that are already out there. You don't have to alter your device in any way, shape, or form. You don't even have to download an app. It's just going to work. And you think about, building out that global footprint for roaming. You think about all the cruise lines that we have coverage. And then you think about the great network that we have in the U.S., the leading national provider when it comes to coverage. There's still thousands of miles, square miles of coverage gaps. So this is like part of the overall mission is how do we just paint everything blue? We like blue. So
we like orange, but we'll trade with some blue colors too.
We were orange for a while too, so we like orange. So.
I don't remember those days, but orange goes well with blue, so I'll take that. Well, JR, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Dave, thank you so much. Look, I think this is going to go down as one of the great innovations of the 21st century, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Great.
Yeah.
If you're just joining this webcast, welcome. I am your host, Dave Mosher, and with AST SpaceMobile here at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, are hundreds of guests eagerly awaiting to see if we have a launch today. Let's have a look down at that scene if we can here. We have, there we go. We can see everybody hanging out. I think they're watching this webcast, so if you guys want to wave, go ahead and do that. Incredible show. Yeah, there we go. Incredible showing out here. Really hoping we get to lift off this morning. And speaking of rockets, our first 5 commercial satellites called BlueBirds are nestled inside the top of that 229-foot tall launch vehicle out there. In fact, we have some really cool images of those satellites. Let's pull those up. Wow, look at that. These are the 5 BlueBird satellites stacked on top of a dispenser. And this is shortly before we encapsulated them, meaning we put them inside of the nose cone. And that is 2 halves of a fairing. You can see those right there. Those slowly come together, seal up the payload, and protect it during launch. So during launch, those fairings will come off and return to Earth, and satellites will keep going on the upper stage or second stage. And again, those golden cylinders are the BlueBirds. Each is about the size of a small car, maybe a Fiat, if you can picture that, or a very large refrigerator, maybe a walk-in refrigerator. And they are affixed to that custom dispenser. I don't know what the technical term for that arrangement is, but I'd call it the revolver chamber or maybe stack of cans. A huge number of factors are, of course, beyond our control when we're going down to T0, the moment of launch. The good news is we're only about 10 minutes away from knowing if that rocket will be fueled. And that is a very necessary step for seeing a launch because, again, you can't have a launch without fuel inside the rocket. We'll keep you posted on that as soon as we have word. While we count down to launch, I want to give you a better sense of the incredible scale of those first-generation BlueBirds you saw just a moment ago and the plans we have for the next generation. Those BlueBirds are each compacted in their containers, which have that golden thermal blanket around them. And however, all of our satellites, once deployed in space, will be the largest ever communications arrays in low Earth orbit, or LEO. Now, size matters when you're trying to take a small phone like this and connect it to space and provide high-speed internet without any modifications to the device. So let's watch that clip. CAS estimates about a 70% chance of overall violating any one of a number of weather-related rules. There are about 10 of those, if you're counting. The good news is that if we miss an opportunity, at 4:52 a.m., which is when our launch window opens, we do have some time to wait out that weather until we are go for liftoff. Now, for example, if a big cloud is sitting over the rocket and we need to wait for it to move out of the way, we have some time to do that. So we may not launch at exactly 4:52. Stay tuned to this webcast. We'll keep you posted. And right now, we are awaiting a very important call for what's called prop load. This is when the propellant goes into the rocket. And we are listening for a call from the launch director at SpaceX around T-minus 38 minutes to launch, or about 4:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is when we will know if our launch vehicle, a Falcon 9 rocket, will be fueled with liquid propellant and liquid oxygen. If so, we are very likely looking at a launch today around 4:52 a.m. If not, we will get launch delay information to you as soon as we have it. And trust me, we're all anxiously awaiting that information. By the way, that propellant I'm talking about is a form of kerosene called RP1, which is a sort of higher grade jet fuel. Most of that prop will pump into the largest section of the rocket called the first stage booster, and in a separate tank, liquid oxygen to eventually and rapidly combust that fuel together. So both the fuel and oxygen are very, very cold, especially that liquid oxygen. It's colder than negative 330 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. So don't panic if you see a lot of gases coming off of the rocket. That's water vapor condensing from the air due to a very chilly fuel temperature. And it's very humid today, so you might see a lot of that. The effect is similar to dropping a piece of dry ice into a bucket of water. It sort of bubbles up. Now, the rocket may also get frosty on the outside, might look a little white. That's also typical. No need to panic about that. And once the RP1 fueling wraps up, we should hear about liquid oxygen going into the smaller upper stage of the rocket. That should start around T-minus 16 minutes into the countdown we are in today. While we are waiting, I have a really great video coming up. It explains how the space-based cellular broadband network that AST SpaceMobile is building could really help out workers who put their lives on the line for the rest of us. Let's roll that tape. I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of dead zones for cellular broadband, and I can't wait for this mission to get into low Earth orbit. If you like that video, you can find a lot more of those on our YouTube channel. That is at youtube.com/C for channel /AST SpaceMobile. That's youtube.com/C/AST SpaceMobile, all one word. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates. And if you're watching on the webcast now on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe as well. Now, I want to talk about some of that content we have on there. We have so many videos that really get into the premise and the mission and the incredible technology really that we've developed over the past years here at AST SpaceMobile. We have interviews with partners, including, you saw JR here earlier today. We have an interview of, for example, Chris Sambar and him talking about the story of how AST SpaceMobile and AT&T sort of got together. And we have a little bit more of that story today later in the webcast. But we also have interviews with, for example, an executive from Telefonica in South America, someone from Nokia, someone from TSMC, the manufacturer of chips. TSMC is our partner in producing ASIC chips, the application-specific integrated circuits that are going to be in our next generation of BlueBird satellites. That's a really important component of the future of this company, and we have a little video about that too. So, and speaking of those chips, those are going to be approximately, on the new satellites, the next gen, it's going to be 10 times more capacity than the satellites we're launching today. So we're already kind of several steps ahead of where we need to be in our manufacturing, and we're working really hard to produce those satellites and make history. Now, we also have some explainer videos and some behind-the-scenes videos if you care to take a look at those. Now, I think we are still waiting for a call on loading that propellant. I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm going to keep telling you about some other things. So, for example, we have a satellite operations center in Lanham, Maryland. What is that? This is a place where our mobsters, who are mission operators, are anxiously waiting for this mission to launch so they can phone home to the satellites and talk to them. So I don't know if we can pull up that view of the Mission Operations Center at this point. Okay. We don't have that view just yet. But as you can see next to me, we do have a launch vehicle, and it is on the pad. It is vertical, and our satellites are on top there. And I do see what looks like some gases moving over there. So we may have propellant loading into that rocket. Let's take a look at that. Now, it looks like we're just looking at some convection there, all the wiggliness that you see on the screen there. So we're going to keep a view of this launch pad for just a moment while we wait for that call and see if we are going to launch at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'll be back with you in just a moment. All right, guys. We are going to have a little bit of an announcement here at the Apollo Saturn V Center. And again, once again, I'm Dave Mosher. I am the host of this podcast. I'm with AST SpaceMobile. On the floor, we have Tom Dewar with AT&T. He's warming up the crowd for an announcement with our CEO, chairman, and founder, Abel Avian. So he's going to do a little bit of a speech. Let's listen in to what's going down there on the floor as we wait to see what happens.
We're down here while they do the webcast up there, but you're here on an incredible day. AST SpaceMobile here, working really to usher in the beginning of a new era in mobile connectivity. Really aimed at eliminating those cellular dead zones that we sometimes find ourselves in. And I know when we travel from place to place, as we do so often nowadays, we can hit those. But what we're doing today here is going to help eliminate a lot of that. And it certainly goes, from an AT&T perspective, a long way to our goal of being the best converged connectivity provider in the country. Now, I know that we're starting to run short on time. We're about a half an hour away from launch. So I want to bring over, among the special guests today that you're going to hear about and hear from, I want to introduce a really important person here. Abel is here. There he is. And I know, Abel, as the CEO of SpaceMobile, AST SpaceMobile, you're going to want to have a couple of words with these folks before we get started.
A little bit more than a couple of words. Hey, guys, thank you very much to be this early. Thank you. And I just got a word. We're launching at the beginning of the window, so that's we're going up. So I want to thank everybody that has worked so hard to get us to this point. I mean, it has been an incredible journey, a very, very difficult journey with a lot of reward. But this journey started by designing the largest ever structures put into space. And the first one was launched in 2022, called BlueBird 3. We learned a lot from that, still working perfectly. We did the first ever phone call from space. We did the first ever LTE connection from space. We did the first 5G connection from space. And we are working in building the first and only broadband system to connect the phone that you just have in your pocket. That is a tremendous, tremendous goal. We are just at the beginning of it, and we are super, super thankful for all the support that we get from you, for our investors, for everybody that follow this project so, so closely. We're extremely, extremely proud, extremely thankful, and we hope to change the world together with you. So this is the beginning of that journey. So let me quickly talk about what is going to happen now. So shortly we're going to move outside. We're going to see liftoff if we continue to be on time. We're going to go up. We're going to check the satellites a lot. 9G, that's roughly what you see when you're in a roller coaster going up. When we get to around 525 kilometers, we're going to separate. Hopefully we have the feed that you will be able to see how the satellites eject out. My engineers are going to call me. We had a back room somewhere here where we're going to take command of the satellite and start communicating with them. But you probably will be able to see the booster coming back, and also you will be able to see as we eject the satellites into space. This is a super exciting moment, and that's what we have planned for today. So that's then in the following days, we're going to take command of the satellite, we're going to check them up, and we are going to be preparing to basically deploy them. When we deploy them, you know, as they go up, they are of the size of a small car, but when they deploy up, they are a very large structure. I mean, that's in meters, roughly 8 meter by 8 meter, roughly 24 feet by 24 feet of area, each one of them. And that's really what makes the difference in connecting the phone that you had in your pocket. That's where it really make it a broadband system. That's what it make it that you can connect directly to your phone. When we had them deployed and starting operations, we plan to start using them fully. There is two usage for them. One is a government usage. They're going to start using them very early on in the mission. And then our partners, which also were super thankful, AT&T and Verizon, they're going to start also using, testing, and start offering the service. So our goal is to offer the service as close as possible as it will be when we're in full operation, but obviously, we are bringing up satellites, the time that we have them available for services is limited, but as we add more, we get more continuous service. So that's, again, this is the beginning of the journey. Our next satellites, these ones are the largest ever launched into LEO. Our next generation is 3.5 times bigger. So that really gives us a lot of runway in how to basically keep the world connected. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to be part of this. Very, very honored to having you all waking up this early to see this together with us. My engineers are around. We're going to leave after we lose sight of the satellites, and hopefully you will stay and see the remaining of the mission. Again, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, you just heard from Abel Aveillán, the founder, chairman, and CEO of AST SpaceMobile, live from Kennedy Space Center. And he brought us some great news, which is they're putting propellant in that rocket, as well as liquid oxygen. We need those two ingredients in our launch vehicle today to make it go up. So if you are just joining us, we are live in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and I'm your host, Dave Mosher, from the AST SpaceMobile communications team. We are counting down to a launch at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is the opening of our window. This is great news because we've been fighting some pretty unfavorable weather conditions. And while we wait, we have some cool animations that help show the scale of those BlueBird satellites that Abel was talking about, and the ones that we are attempting to launch today, our first generation BlueBird satellites. So you can see in the picture to my left, your right, I guess, we have a scale size animation. So you see those cars pulling up. This thing can fit 6 full-size cars on top of it once it's unfolded, a small family power boat. It's also about just under half the size of a volleyball court. Or if you live in a city, it's roughly a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in terms of square footage. It's about 700 square feet. Now, when those BlueBirds are folded up, they're put into the top of the rocket. The rocket goes up, as you're seeing here, and it needs to reach 17,000 miles per hour to reach low Earth orbit. And once it does, that second stage will come off, and eventually the satellites will be separated from the launch vehicle, as you can see here. That step, by the way, is not going to happen until about 55 minutes after launch, but don't go anywhere because we're going to keep the webcast going throughout that entire time. Now, once these satellites go into orbit, and they are deployed, which was a process that could take a few weeks. We'll see what happens. They will be the largest commercial communications arrays in low Earth orbit, as Abel just said. You need that kind of aperture to provide high-speed cellular broadband from space and connect with everyday smartphones like this one. Now, to get these satellites into space, as I just said, we compacted them and placed them inside the top of the rocket. That's the nose cone you can see over here. Inside are the 5 satellites. They're covered in gold, sort of thermal blanketing, and they're stacked in a stack of cans or like a revolver from a gun. And that thing is going to reach 17,000 miles per hour in a matter of 8 minutes or so. And that is about a dozen times faster than a bullet fired from a gun. So if you're a satellite in low Earth orbit, that is essentially the speed that you need to continuously free fall around the planet. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, how satellites work. Now, launch is just the first important phase of the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission. Once we get these satellites up, our goal, as I said, is to deploy them. And then we need to test them. We're going to have a test campaign we announced that we're going to use about 2,000 ordinary mobile phones all over the world with select testers to kick off the first ever space-based cellular broadband commercial services with our incredible partners, like the one we saw here today. We had J.R. Wilson sitting here. This means we have today's launch attempt. We are on the cusp of creating a network that is rich with use cases for consumers, first responders, government agencies, and more. So how will this space-age approach to cellular broadband actually work? Lucky for you, we have prepared an explainer that highlights how the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission and its underlying technologies will do just that. Let's have a look.
You're driving through the middle of nowhere.
Really just scratches the surface of what should be possible with AST SpaceMobile's space-based cellular broadband network. And speaking of network, we are coming to you live from Cape Canaveral, Florida. We're not too far from here. Sits a big rocket with the first 5 commercial satellites on top. And that is the view you're seeing here. If you see a bunch of gases coming off the side, that is because propellant is going inside of the rocket, which is a good thing. We want that to happen. And once again, I am Dave Mosher. I am your host from the AST SpaceMobile communications team. Now, the large first stage or booster of our 229-foot tall launch vehicle should be just about done filling up with that very chilly liquid oxygen I mentioned. Again, it's about negative 330, negative 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Very, very cold. And there's also RP1, which is the propellant. That is a high-grade form of kerosene. And that's why it's looking a little frosty here. We have some gas coming off. And this view, by the way, is coming from about 2.7 miles from the launch pad. So it's a really close view, pretty awesome look at SpaceX's pad out there at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now, after this, after the first stage booster is done being filled, our launch provider will fill up the upper or second stage with liquid oxygen, or LOX. And that is needed to rapidly combust that RP1 fuel and send this rocket soaring toward low Earth orbit, which is where we want those satellites to get dropped off. Now, some other things to note about this is the launch timeline. Like, what are we expecting? So right now, we have been filling up with propellant and liquid oxygen. The next really big step that we're looking for here is to finish that upper stage LOX loading. Then we're going to do something called an engine chill around T-minus 7 minutes. Now, what is that? That is when SpaceX will run some of that liquid propellant and oxygen through, or one of the two, through the engines to chill them. Because if you have a lot of very cold fuel hitting a relatively warm engine, that's not good. So they have to do a pre-chill on those engines. And that'll take a while. And right around the 1 minute mark is we're really going to see if we're going to have a launch today. Because that's when our launch provider will start going through all the checks needed. And around 45 seconds to launch, we should know if we're going to do it. Because we're going to hear a go for launch from that launch director. And again, to my left and your right is a view of that rocket on the launch pad, LC-40, here in Cape Canaveral, Florida. So I got a special graphic I want to share with you. This is from SpaceX. It's up on their website under their launches page. Now, this is kind of the full profile look at what our mission is going to do today. On the bottom left there, you see that rocket, and it takes off, and it's going to take about 2.5 minutes to get to a point where we have stage separation. That is when the booster and the upper stage, so the first stage and second stage, will separate. Now, that booster is going to flip around, which is why you see that loop up top, and it's going to come back to Earth, and SpaceX is going to try to reuse that. And I believe the booster we are launching on today has been used a number of times. So that's going to go through an entry burn. It's going to do some automated landing back here at the Cape. For those of you sitting out at the Banana Creek bleachers, our guests here today, they're going to see quite a show because it's very loud. There's some sonic booms. There's some flame. It's pretty exciting. Now, immediately after that booster comes back, we should see or hear about second engine cutoff. That is called SECO, and it's the first of a couple cutoffs, and we need that to start a coast phase into orbit around Earth. Now, our satellites aren't just going to hang out there. Well, they're going to hang out there for about 45 minutes, and then after that, we're going to get a little burn on that upper stage and get those satellites to exactly where they need to go. And at that point, at about 55 minutes into the launch, we are going, hopefully, to see some views of those satellites separating from the upper stage. So now, while we wait for this process to ensue and we get to launch, I want to share a quick interview with a former member of the military, speaking of the Space Force Station, and someone who has a really great pulse on how first responders today could really use
183rd overall mission to
broadband.
date. My name is Soumya Srivastava, and I'm a heat shield engineer here at SpaceX, joining you from Hawthorne, California. We're just about 12 minutes away from launch. Both the vehicle and range are green, and we are on track for an on-time launch at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Time, although we do have a 60% possibility of violation on weather, so we are keeping an eye on that. Today's mission is AST SpaceMobile's first of 5 launches of their BlueBird commercial satellites, which are designed to work like cell towers in space, directly with everyday mobile phones. Today's mission follows AST SpaceMobile's Blue Walker Satellite 3, which launched on a Falcon 9 mission back in 2022. Blue Walker Walker demonstrated satellite direct-to-cell phone calls, data downloads, streaming video, and video calls. AST plans to build a constellation of many satellites, including a next-generation BlueBird that's 3 times larger than the BlueBird satellites launching today, which themselves are about half the size of a volleyball court. Before we meet today's Falcon 9, let's take a minute to learn more about AST SpaceMobile and its BlueBird satellites.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX BlueBird Block 1, satellites 1 through 5, set to launch from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida in just over 10 minutes' time. We're also getting ready to begin live coverage of the historic Polaris Dawn spacewalk, so make sure you stay tuned on both streams as they're going to be happening at basically the same time. We have liftoff, and then we're immediately into spacewalk coverage. We will be planning to stay live following all of the deployments of the BlueBirds that are expected to occur just about an hour after launch, so we hope that you'll stay with us for that, while also watching the Polaris Dawn launch. Of course, we're going to be answering your comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and if you haven't yet, share out the stream, invite people to join us. We're going to listen back in to AST's commentary as well as SpaceX mission control as we count down the final 10 minutes till launch.
A couple of years ago, and I have to say he's a big fan of what AST SpaceMobile is doing, as you can see with that video, and I'm really glad that he is on our board and in our orbit as a company. And while we're speaking of orbits, we are trying to get to launch today. We are looking at a 4:52 a.m. launch time. Now, if you're just joining us, I am Dave Mosher. I am the head of content here at AST SpaceMobile, and we are rapidly counting down to the launch of this mission, which is BlueBird 1 to 5. And we've heard some incredible partners of ours. And be sure to replay this broadcast. If you're just tuning in, I know some of you are coming in pretty late. You know, you're waking up and you're just trying to see if this rocket's going to go. Well, it's probably going to go today. That's the good news. But we have some really great content that we've done earlier in the show. So definitely take a listen, take a watch after the show, and or rewind the broadcast, whatever you want to do, because there's some really cool stuff in that broadcast. Now, our launch vehicle is getting close to fully fueled, if it's not fully fueled already. I think we're right about the 7-minute mark, which is when the LOX load on that upper stage rocket of the Falcon 9 is going to be finished.
The BlueBird satellites, which are built by AST SpaceMobile in Midland, Texas, seek to help connect the unconnected. Around 2.6 billion people have no internet access, and more than 5.5 billion cellular subscribers still experience coverage gaps. AST SpaceMobile's goal is to provide 4G and 5G cellular broadband coverage to even the most remote of areas, including high-speed downloads, streaming, and video calls. Planned service could also assist first responders and help with disaster recovery. Today's mission is a critical step for AST SpaceMobile as they continue to expand their network and bring communication services to even more people around the world. Now, let's meet Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket developed and manufactured by SpaceX, known for its safe, reliable, and cost-effective access to space. It's also the first and currently the only orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. Starting at the top of the vehicle is the payload fairing, a protective shell that encases the payload being sent to space.
Load is complete.
Today's fairings will be flying for their 18th and 8th times today and will be recovered by our recovery vessel, Go Cosmos, after launch. That fairing will separate and jettison away from the vehicle, exposing the payload once Falcon 9 reaches space. Here's a photo of the satellites being encapsulated in that fairing just a few days ago. Continuing down the vehicle, we have the second stage. The second stage is powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, which is optimized to perform in the vacuum of space. And below that is the first stage, which contains 8 engines arranged around one center engine, held in place by a structure called the octaweb. Each of these 9 Merlin 1D engines delivers about 190,000 pounds of thrust at sea level, which gives Falcon 9 a combined 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. The Falcon 9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs that deploy just before landing to allow for vertical touchdown on a drone ship or a landing pad. Let's take a look at today's flight profile. Today, Falcon 9's primary objective is to launch the 5 BlueBird satellites into low Earth orbit. And in order to do that, Falcon 9 will follow a trajectory that takes it southeast over the Atlantic Ocean, climbing vertically before curving downrange in a maneuver we called the gravity turn, where the rocket starts bending its path to race along the Earth's surface. About 1 minute into flight, the rocket will hit max Q, or maximum dynamic pressure, where the vehicle is continuing to gain speed as it passes through the thick lower atmosphere. At about 2 minutes...
Strongback lower has started.
We just heard from on the nets that the strongback is beginning to pull away from the vehicle. We will first actually see the clamp arms opening up, which we see right there, and then the strongback will pull away. So after about 2 minutes, Falcon 9 will arrive at its second major flight milestone, main engine cutoff, or MECO, and immediately following MECO, the first and second stages separate. Following stage separation, the first stage will perform a stage flip maneuver to orient itself for boost back burn, and at about the same time, the MVAC engine will light during second engine start, or SES1, on stage 2 to continue carrying the BlueBird satellites to their intended orbit. And a few seconds later, the first stage will execute a roughly 1 minute boost back burn to reverse direction and begin to head home. And about 40 seconds after boost back starts, the payload fairing will separate, exposing the BlueBird satellites to space for the first time. About 2.5 minutes after completing the boost back burn, the first stage will perform an entry burn as it re-enters the atmosphere, slowing down to reduce heat and stress on the vehicle. This is followed about 1 minute later by the landing burn, which will guide the first stage all the way back down to touchdown. Today, we'll be attempting to return the booster to the launch site and touch down at Landing Zone 1, or LZ1, at Cape Canaveral.
Stage 1 lock load is complete.
At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of rocket-grade kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Both the first and second stage should finish propellant loading about a minute apart from each other, with the first stage finishing up at the T-minus 3 minute mark, which just happened, and the second stage finishing shortly at the T-minus 2 minute mark.
Stage 2 lock load is complete.
So we just heard that the second stage is now fully loaded with propellant, and at about T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will enter startup, and that means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers will have taken over the launch countdown. And then just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we will light the 9 M1D first stage engines for liftoff. Weather is still looking green, and the range is ready to support our T0.
Gas launch closeouts has started.
our T0 of 4:52 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, we are proceeding into the last few minutes of terminal count.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Just heard that Falcon 9 is now in startup, which means the internal flight computers have taken over for the launch countdown.
LD, go for launch.
And the launch director, or LD, has given the final go for launch. So at T-minus 35 seconds, all systems are go for the launch of Falcon 9.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Copy alarms.
At T plus 33 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Slick 40. After clearing the tower, we tilt or gimbal the engines to initiate a roll maneuver, which you may notice in the Stage 1 camera view. This enables the vehicle's antennas to stay in the best position for communicating with the ground. And in just a few seconds, we'll be throttling down the engines in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Vehicle is supersonic. Max Q.
And there's max Q. And from this point on, while Falcon 9 is still accelerating to an orbital speed of about 17,500 miles per hour, aerodynamic pressure on Falcon decreases as we approach the vacuum of space.
MVAC chill has started.
Now we have 6 events coming up in quick succession, and we should hear all of these called out by Mission Control, starting with MECO, then stage separation, stage 1 flip, second engine start 1 or SES 1, and the first stage boost back burn, and lastly fairing separation. After stage 1 shuts down its engines and separates from the second stage, the booster turns itself around in a flip maneuver to make its way back to land near the launch site. The boost back burn is a controlled engine burn that both slows the booster's forward velocity and then propels it towards its landing site. After boost back, stage 1 will continue to coast in microgravity to the highest point of its flight, called the apogee. It will then begin to
Main
descend.
engine cut off.
There we just heard MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage separation.
MVAC ignition.
And SES 1.
Suspect startup.
Great call-outs there, and a great view of that MVAC engine lighting up. So after boost back, it will then begin to descend under the acceleration of gravity until it's time to relight the engines for entry burn.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Great call out there for fairing separation. We will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel, Go Cosmos. Coming up next, we will have boost back shutdown right on time.
Both vehicles are nominal trajectory.
So we're now about T plus 3 minutes and 48 seconds into today's mission. And our next major mission milestone will be the first stage entry burn, which will take place just past the T plus 6 minute mark. To start the entry burn, we will relight 3 of the M1D engines, which is really similar to pumping the brakes to slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. The entry burn helps reduce the heat generated from the friction of the atmosphere and reduces the aerodynamic forces acting on Falcon, which helps maintain controlled flight and prepare for the landing burn. We are about 1 minute and 15 seconds away from the first stage entry burn. The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level, and these achieve about 190,000 pounds of thrust each during ascent and descent. And at liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has thrust that's greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power. And the MVAC engine that you see burning on your screen has a much wider nozzle, and that one is optimized to 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum. That entry burn coming up in about 30 seconds, where Falcon 9 will decelerate by firing its Merlin engines.
Stage 1 entry burn.
You can, great call out there, and you can see
the
entry burn just completed. But you can see that that the stage 1 is still continuing to move really, really fast, even though it is slowing down. During entry burn, the vehicle is flying through Merlin's exhaust gases, or its plume, which deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. And with each flight, the soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. We have a landing burn coming up in about 30 seconds from now.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Great call for the landing burn.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And that was the 13th launch and landing for this first stage. And this landing marks SpaceX's 347th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
We have SECO 1 coming up in about
Stage 2 FTS
15 seconds from now.
And back shutdown.
Great call out. We just had SECO 1. And we aren't expecting to have ground station coverage for the first 3 deployments today, so we'll be returning around T+1 hour for the final 2 deployments. So we'll see you then.
Good transfer orbit.